So, as far as episodes go, this is probably going to be the most family-friendly episode that I've ever done, considering that I do actually talk about members of a family. And that's probably about where the bullshit ends, because there's nothing very family-friendly about this one. Actually, it's just me talking about men, women, and children. And I will get to that in a bit, but before I do that, I just need to say, Kenyans are hoes. Like, let's just be honest, Kenyans are hoes. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is something that I am going to go into in a little bit, but before I get into any of that, let me just start by spitting a couple of numbers, because I feel like this week has been a particularly big week if you're looking at numbers in the world of social media. Now, first of all, this was a number that came at the beginning of this week. The Duke of Sussex, if not former Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry's new memoir known as Spare, has set a record for the fastest selling non-fiction book of all time. And according to the Guinness World Records, it sold 1.43 million copies in its first day of sale in the UK, US, and Canada. And honestly speaking, damn. Like, I never really pictured people had that much desire for royal gossip up until this guy started teasing the memoir. Of course, there's like the whole, I don't know if I can call it a mini documentary or a reality series that he did on Netflix with his wife. Like, this dude is literally just milking the fuck out of the fact that he was in the royal family, which is a little bit odd, because the only other story from how he lost his virginity that I found to be mildly interesting was the whole story about how he supposedly once did shrooms at Courtney Cox's house, where he hallucinated that the toilet was talking to him, which isn't really anything that big. Like, it sounds like something you'd tell your friends at like the bar, or like when you're having drinks or food and shit, but that's pretty much it. But that aside, the more juicy story is actually coming from Australia, not even the UK. Now, apparently Iggy Azalea went and set up an OnlyFans account, and in her debut sometime this week, in the first 24 hours, it is being reported that she made around $307,000 from her first set of new subscribers. Now, you kind of think about it, this is somebody who's pretty famously known for making actual hits. Like, I'm not saying that she's a hit maker right now, she hasn't made them in quite a while, but still, this is someone who is capable of making hits and who supposedly has some sort of a musical or rapping talent. But she decides that OnlyFans is going to be a better option, and somewhere in the tens of thousands, a couple of people that have been ogling at her body decide, you know what, fuck it, let me do this. Now, from the minimal research that I have done on the entire thing, apparently she is promising quote-unquote unapologetically hot, uncensored content, although the reality of it is she is trying to push her music through there and everything, and the entire thing is supposed to be a part of like some collaboration that she's doing so that she can release her fourth studio album, and she's sort of promising like first look at like videos, at like new music and shit, but most people are going there because they're expecting explicit shit. And I'm gonna be pretty honest. First of all, I don't think there's anything that's that explicit that you can't find on her IG. Like, not in a bad way, but I can remember this ginger chick that used to be in That's So Raven. I forgot her name. She also, when she set up an OnlyFans, she broke the record. She hit $1 million in the first 24 hours. And the picture that she pretty much had people waiting for, paying for and everything ended up being her, I think, in a bikini sipping wine, which was very, very underwhelming, to the point where actually OnlyFans had to change its financial policy. So considering that this is a woman who didn't want to join OnlyFans before, and she's like a full-on mother and shit, and she's been in the entertainment game for a while, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to write her off as a hoe already, it's just, I don't really think that there's that much that people will really get from her. Then, second of all, I think the babes need to come back and have that discussion with us where they used to talk about how we objectify them, but nowadays they're willing to join OnlyFans and get paid because we objectify them. Because honestly speaking, I have to ask, is it that you don't want to be objectified, or is it that you don't want to be objectified for free? And with that question, we might as well start this podcast, so... Welcome to Breaktime on Westside, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who used to believe that bukkake was a form of martial arts. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Tweetstreet, the show where we take a deep dive into Twitter, pull up a couple of tweets and break them down a little bit. Now, as usual, if you know the drill, then you can repeat it after me. If you don't know the drill, then it's okay, I'm gonna say it for you. And if you do know the drill, but you don't want to say anything, it's perfectly okay, because it relates to how it is that you can contribute to the making of these episodes via sending in the various tweets that you would like me to discuss. And it's a very simple drill. It almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly on Facebook or on IG. If it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, if it ended up turning into a reel, then the place to send it to is @BreakdownMonoSide on Facebook or on IG. The DMs are always open and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. Now, before I get into anything, just a quick side note. If you hear a humming noise or you can hear some sort of distracting sound in my background, it's because there's construction happening around my place and I've waited for too bloody long in between recording takes, so I figured I might as well just go with it, and I'll try to fix as much of it in post as possible. So if you hear it, that's what's happening. If you didn't, then I did a pretty good job editing. Alright, now we definitely have a show to get on the road, and I have eaten into a little bit of time here and there. But before I get into the tweets, we do need to talk about the thing that I was saying earlier on, Kenyans and hoeing. Because the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics came through with a couple of stats that were particularly interesting for quite a number of us, more so me, because I'm somebody who was once talking about how, there's a lot of great people in Kenya that would be great partners. But when it came to the whole sexual partners thing, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, things were particularly promiscuous, or so we thought. Now, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Kenyan men have an average of 7 sexual partners and women have an average of 2 sexual partners. Of which, from the little math that I used to do back in the day, my math teachers used to tell me that you used to take a decimal point or a fraction as a full person because there's no fraction of a person. And according to the report itself, it says 7.4 among men and 2.3 among women. So technically that's 8 and 3. Which is a little bit odd because last I checked, I do not have that many partners right now. And I'm a guy. Like, I barely have any. Like, I don't even get how the hell it is people are having 7 partners at the same time. But let me just read what was mostly reported about this entire thing. Now, it reads, and I quote, Murang'a County leads in the number of women with more than 2 sexual partners, a new survey shows. The Kenya Demographic and Health Survey 2022, released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics on Tuesday, shows that of the Kenyan women with multiple sexual partners, 11% are from Murang'a. 6.5% were from Kericho County, while Busia made 6.2%. For men, Migori County leads among those who admitted to having more than 2 sexual partners at 28.7%, followed by Elgeyo Marakwet at 28.5% and West Pokot at 27.2%. Research has also found that a higher proportion of men, which is 15% than women, 4%, reported having 2 or more sexual partners in the 12 months prior to the survey. The average numbers of sexual partners are 7.4 among men and 2.3 among women. Of those with more than one partner in the last 12 months, 24% of women and 45% of men reported using a condom during their last sexual intercourse, the report said. In the 12 months before the survey, 19% of women had sex with a person who was neither their husband nor lived with them, and just 37% of these women reported using a condom during their last sexual intercourse with such a partner. 35% of men reported having sex in the last 12 months with a person who was neither their wife nor lived with them, and 68% of these men reported using a condom during the last sexual intercourse with such a partner, it added. At the same time, divorcees and widowed Kenyans were found to be more likely to have more than 2 sexual partners. 6.9% of women who admitted to having more than 2 sexual partners in the last year were divorced, separated, or widowed. 4.3% had never been married, and 2.2% of those were married or living together with their partners. End quote. End of story. Alright, so from whatever's been said, I can probably give a little bit of context to this. Now, first of all, I don't think when they were talking about having 7.4 and 2.3 sexual partners, it meant active at the time, because it's actually very different. You can say 7 or 8 partners, but it doesn't mean that they're all active at the same time. It might actually just relate to their body count, of which that's actually not such a bad figure, because when you kind of think about it, there's a few guys that are banging so many babes, and there's a ton of guys that aren't getting any. So when it comes down to it, at least the guys don't look like they're completely failing, but it doesn't look like they're going a little overboard. On the other hand, it also looks like babes are clearly getting the freak on, but they're not doing it with too many dudes. And that's kind of a good thing, when you kind of think about it. Because I know that there's some teenagers that will probably be having a body count of 20 plus by this point. But at the same time, it also means that there's some women who may be teenagers or even older that have barely had sex or have only had sex with, like, say, 1 or 2 partners. Although, to be very honest, it is a little bit concerning that I didn't hear anything about Nairobi, because Nairobi people talk about sex quite a bit, and I tend to think that us guys have been doing it quite a bit. But I'm guessing probably we weren't as forthcoming with the information when it came to a study as opposed to when we're talking about this shit in social media. Although the thing that was even more worrying was actually the numbers when you looked at the women and the condom usage. Like, these are women that are sleeping with people that aren't their partners, aren't married to them, and don't live with them per se. So the whole presumption of marriage with the whole "come we stay" story, like, these are people that you're not married to and you're not particularly living with, and yet you're finding that more babes are going in raw as opposed to the dudes, which can tell you a little bit of something, especially when you look at cases of infidelity. Because yes, women have very, very low numbers of infidelity, at least according to this report. But unlike the male counterparts, they're going and they're banging people without condoms, or at least a massive number of them are going and banging without condoms as opposed to the dudes. Which kind of does give a little bit of ammo to the red pill guys that like talking about, men and women don't cheat the same, blah, blah. Because this is a very clear indication. Men cheat and wear a condom, babes cheat and they don't. They raw dog that shit. But anyways, let me get into the men for a little bit as I start on to the tweet. So on to our very first tweet of this episode. Men date who they need when they're down, and they date who they want when they're up. This is not open for discussion today, so don't start. Alright, can I say that this is true as a man? Well, not entirely. I think it's the wording that's actually the problem, because I actually tried to think this through for a little bit, and it became a little bit of an issue because I'm like, how exactly do you determine need when a guy is down? Because a lot of times when guys are down, one of the things that we usually tend to drop as one of the things that we're chasing at the time is relationships, or at least that's most of what we do nowadays. A lot of guys will decide not to marry, not to start dating when they're down, because relationships are an investment. Like, not in a bad way, ladies, but y'all can be expensive as fuck. Whether or not you're using your money, whether or not, like, y'all are just chilling at home 80% of the time, at the end of the day, there's a certain cost that's going to exist simply because you have someone else with you at the time. Whether it's going out for drinks or going for an event, like, there's always going to be a cost of some sort. So to say that a man would need to start dating a certain woman while they're down is a little bit hard. Maybe you can say that, men date who they can when they're down. Like, that one makes a lot more sense because the options are fewer, and on the list of people that they can date, there's obviously going to be a very, very small number, if ever at all. And maybe the one babe that will choose to be with them is a person that they can be with. But when now they have the money, they're up, they're doing pretty well, that's when a lot of the babes will start to pop up. Now that's when guys can actually decide who it is that they want to be with as opposed to who it is that they can be with. And normally whenever this whole comparison thing is being done, it's usually men and women, and it's usually in relation to age. And the saying that's usually there, I think, if I'm not paraphrasing it too much, is when you're in your 20s, I think. Yeah, when you're in your early 20s, men date who they can and women date who they want. Then when you get to your 30s, men date who they want and women date who they can. And it's this whole talk of, like, men age like wine, women age like milk, blah, blah, blah. But all in all, it does kind of come back to this exact same thing. It's literally a case of choice. When do you have the most choice? For guys, it's when they're up and they're in a fairly successful position and they're doing fairly well. But with babes, it's usually when they're at the peak of their youth and they're good looking and so on and so forth. Although the one thing that I will give to this lady who did this tweet is the fact that she didn't use age. she actually used the idea of when you're down and when you're up, because the age thing is very misleading, because for a guy, it's not based off of how old you are. It's pretty much when you're at your most successful, or at least when you're doing well by yourself as an independent person, as opposed to how old you are. There's guys that are pretty much doing super well and they're 23 years old. There's some guys that won't be doing well up until they're like 35, 36, hell, maybe even 40. And interestingly enough, this applies to the babes as well. Like, I'm not saying that, shorties are gonna be getting a glow up at like 50, 55, but some of them actually retain their youth and maintain a youthful look well past their 30s, which is why the whole, women age like milk thing is a very, very subjective thing. At the end of the day, guys can look good because you have a beard and you have a bit of gray hair here and there, and that can make you look all masculine and dominant and shit. But babes can look good even beyond the age of 30. So I like the fact that she didn't center this on age, but she centered it on your current well-being and how well you're doing as a person. Although, all that said and done, I should probably move it on. So on to our very next tweet of this episode. 3 years ago, I went to the Churchill show. Next to me sat a very calm, bearded, tall, nice-smelling guy. A small chit-chat here and there, and he finally asked for my phone number. After some days, he invited me for a lunch date, in which I turned down. He finally gave up since I was really playing hard to get. LOL. Guess he got fed up and deleted my number or something. At some point, I lost his contacts too, but I do have a strong feeling that man was the love of my life. He was exactly my type, that one. So my question is, why do men give up so quick? Actually, that one isn't even too hard to answer. It's actually quite simple. The reason why we give up is because we simply do not understand why you'd run away from a good thing. So if you're turning us down, or if you're pretty much playing hard to get, then you probably don't want us. And I know it's probably not true, but let me just try and put it into context like this. When has someone ever offered you $1 million and you've run away from that money? Not unless if it's drug money or some shit, which is bad, of which if someone just offers you good money like that, you'll pretty much just take it. You'll run towards it. You'll even make it easier for them. But with babes, for some reason, you're offered the opportunity of being with a great guy, but that's when you suddenly want to play hard to get? Like, the fuck? Like, that shit's never made sense to me. Like, when someone is trying to be with you, that's when you're suddenly making it harder for them. It's never made sense to me. And in this current age of sexual harassment, Me Too, and consent is everything, you pretty much have to plan yourself very carefully. You wouldn't want to be called a creep out in these streets. And I know, yes, it was just texting and sure he was playing hard to get, but if I do not feel like you actually want me there, if I do not feel like you want to be with me, then I'm gonna back off. And yes, maybe call me, a young soft dude, and I'm not old school like the other guys I used to go and like do all the hard work and shit, but honestly, I believe that if you want something, then you're gonna reach out and get it. Or at the very least, you're going to open your arms out wide as it approaches you. Kind of like that puppy that you'd really like, or that kitten, depending on what animal you like. So if you as a person are pretty much looking at the opportunity of being with me, and you want to start stretching out the whole process of me being with you and taking you out on a date, especially considering that she said finally, meaning that this guy probably made a couple of moves and this woman was turning all of them down, then by all means, I will back the fuck off, and I salute this dude because he did not waste any more time with the babe. Like, I'm an efficient person and I believe in efficiency, so I might as well go hit on you, make sure that I've established that I'm interested in you. If you establish that you're interested in me, then at least we can move things forward. This whole bullshit of playing hard to get has never helped anyone. It just makes for a good story, but it never helps anyone at the end of it. Although, all that said and done, I'm going to leave it at that and I'm going to move it on. So on to our very final tweet of this episode. I think we need to educate people living below the poverty line that one kid is enough until they're financially stable. With this tough economy, it breaks my heart to see someone who is struggling to feed one kid getting another. I don't think we're ready for this conversation. Actually, I'd say that we probably are, and we've probably had this conversation quite a bit. It's just that there are some people that are a little bit dumb, or at least their mindsets are a little bit ignorant of the fact that you need money to sustain a child's life. Like, let me just put it like that, because let's be particularly honest. Sometimes you are in a shitty position as a dude, and a shorty is telling you that she's pregnant and she wants to keep the kid, and you're like, what the fuck is this bitch saying? And I have to be honest, that's how some guys will react the moment they hear a babe saying that she's pregnant and she wants to keep the kid. And it's a massive part of the reason why guys don't want to have kids early on, because we are expected to provide for that kid and we do not have the means to provide for that kid. But you're the one that's like, oh, I want us to have the baby, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that aborting is a good thing, or that whatever contraceptive that you'll use, which will cause some level of hormonal imbalance in your system, is good. It's just that when you look at the situation, a lot of times having kids is actually a major expense in your life. And you never really know how much of an expense it is up until you actually start to look at the figures. If you actually want to know for yourself how expensive it can be, go to the baby shop at any mall that has the baby shop store and just look at the pricing on clothing. Like, a lot less fabric, a lot smaller of a size, but that clothing probably costs more than the clothing that I'd be wearing at the time. Then on top of that, go and check the list of the top hospitals in Nairobi and look at how much they charge for a normal delivery. And you will suddenly start to rethink that shit. Then go and look at C-section, because you might end up going there and they realize, oh shit, we can't do normal delivery because of complications. You're gonna have to do C-section. It's literally like double that cost. And this is like 95, 100K for some of these hospitals. And you're telling me that you want to start having a kid now, huh? Like, do you really get the kind of shit that us guys have to go through? And I haven't even gotten to the baby formula bits and, buying diapers and bibs and shit, of which I think that one's even easier. Go to your local supermarket, look at the costs of diapers. Still, at the end of the day, that shit is expensive as hell. And it is very unfortunate that there's people who still come out and they're like, oh, Mungu akikupea mtoto, anakupea sahani yake. Like, I can get it, yes. If God is giving me a child, he can give me a plate, but that plate is going to be empty. If that plate is empty, someone has to put food on that plate. That is going to be the parent's responsibility. If I am not capable of doing that, then I do not see why I need to have that kid. Just saying. And I know that there's people that are going to say, oh, having children is a blessing. So the more the children, the more the blessings. Or people will talk about how it increases the odds of success because, more of these kids are going to have their own shots and shit. So it's a numbers game. And to that, I say bullshit. I would much rather have 1 or 2 children, because at the end of the day, the grandparents are still going to treat them like a blessing. I would much rather bet on them becoming successful and putting my all in trying to educate them and teach them how to be good people, as opposed to having 15 children. And I'm just going to say that the main problem why people do this is, 1, they have the time to do it, and 2, I don't think they really think that far about contraception, because there's all these myths about contraceptions and how a guy's contraception is only a condom. Now, by all means, if you feel like you would like to continue having sex but you don't want to have to use a condom, go get a vasectomy. It's not that hard. And then on top of that, for the babes, there's so many others and they're not that expensive, at least as far as I've been told. So please, if you know someone who is from an impoverished community or is living below the poverty line, please educate them on contraceptives, and please tell them, even though they're shagging, that there's some people who can just pull out. Because at least that one still has a couple of benefits here and there, even though the whole use case is like 70%. Although, all that said and done, there was actually something that I was being told not too long ago by my friend and podcaster Wes. Mad shout out to Wes. And dude was saying that the issue isn't having the kid, it's who you're having the kid with. Which is an entirely different topic for an entirely different podcast episode. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'd like to thank you so much for reaching all the way till the end. If you do have any thoughts, comments, or feedback, then the DMs are always open. On Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. On Facebook and on IG, it is at Breaktime on Westside. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.